Our guest is seated this hour. Wakili, yes. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
You know, I'm not able to ask whether you ask about Lagos or Nairobi.
Why not? Just ask me, how is Lagos? I know what's going on even now.
How is Lagos?
Okay, we're just waking up at 6 a.m. It's 6:11 in Lagos. Ndegwa Njiru is an advocate of the High Court and sits in the hot seat with us this morning. He's been away for a while. He's been, digging in the trenches, but he's here this morning.
Yeah.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so
Wakili.
much. And how is Dennis?
Salama sana ukoaje?
Niko fiti.
Good to see you.
Tunang'ang'ana. Hey.
Muhimu.
Yeah.
Hivyo ndio Wakenya wote wanasema.
Wakenya wanavumilia bro.
Okay.
Hii story ni noma.
We're going to get into it just a little bit.
Hii story ni noma. Hii story hii nchi yetu ni noma sana.
Okay.
Hey, we got to work and do something.
All right.
Okay. Before we get to that,
yes,
Dennis is going to give us today's proverb. We love your interpretation of it.
Yes.
From the Congo, beautiful country, many resources.
Yes.
The only thing that the country is dealing with right now that is a problem is security.
Yes.
We only hope and continue to wish them the very best that the country gets to enjoy peace. But let's go to the proverb.
Yeah.
When you marry a monkey for its wealth, the money goes, but monkey stays.
Take it again. When you marry
a monkey for its wealth,
yes,
the money goes, but the monkey stays.
When you marry a monkey for its wealth, the money goes and the monkey stays.
Yes.
I would take it perhaps an example of a monkey and a banana that doesn't know how to, it's not a good, it doesn't have the stewardship traits that cannot nurture, and therefore it's just like you've put your money in the river and it just flows. So I'm looking at the question of the ability to nurture, the issue of the ability to grow and to be a good steward of what has been placed on your hands. You may want to go biblical and perhaps quote the story of the parables. One was given 5, nurtured them. One was given 1, never nurtured. So I think that the story, the biblical story vis-a-vis the Congolese proverb. But again, you could also look at the wealth in Congo, that they are not able to exploit the wealth because of the instability that is currently existing, which has been instigated by the enemies of the African continent. So the fact is that Congolese have all the wealth which can change the destiny of Africa, which can change the destiny of the world, but they're not able to exploit it because the country is in the hands of the monkeys. Yes.
Why?
Yeah. And of course, the monkeys in Congo are not just exclusively in Congo.
Okay.
They stretch all the way to Kenya. Some of them are actually here. We are dealing with them here, but they are trying to destabilize the entire East Africa. So monkeys ni nyingi sana.
Okay.
Hata huku kwetu uko nayo.
Okay. Interesting that you say that.
Yes.
Well, looking into things political a little bit, we've come off of a by-election just about 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Where decisions were made, but we saw a number of other things happening. Prior to that, we saw things that we were confused about because we were not quite sure. The law is clear.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
The law is clear about certain things. And one of them is that state officers cannot use their offices and or resources to campaign. That's clear.
Yes, that's clear.
But somehow we still keep doing it.
Yes.
And this by-election, we've repeated it over and over again, but we need to use this to look forward.
Yes.
Because it said it is a precursor for what is coming in 2027.
Yes.
So if we break the law with wanton abandon, are we likely to see the same thing happening? And why, if it's against the law and understood, why do we still see a breaking of it?
We have a problem in this country. We got ourselves a new constitution, a perfect document, a progressive one, but it was placed on the wrong hands for its implementation. The people who were given the first opportunity to attempt to implement the document, they had no idea how Kenya got this document. Both the first, the Uhuru tried his best to see to it that the constitution was implemented, but he never followed through the whole process of its implementation. So those people who fought for the constitution were never granted the opportunity to implement it. The architectures of the Constitution were not the ones who were to operationalize the Constitution. So Uhuru tried his best to see to it that the Constitution has been realized, the purpose of it has been achieved, but never followed through, because some of the institutions that had been created under the new Constitution, like the Commission on the Implementation of the Constitution, lapsed before the full implementation could be realized. So now we left the process of the implementation to the politicians. And the reason why we had come up with the CIC was to make sure that we delink the process of the implementation of the Constitution from the political maneuvers. So unfortunately, we never thought through that we needed this commission for the next 10 or 15 years to see to it and to midwife the process of the implementation. So when the time for the CIC, which was led by Chair Nyachai, the former judge of the South African Court of Justice, lapsed, we never thought how else we could have had the another midwife to process through constitutional implementation. So that is why we are now here today. That even with a progressive constitution, a constitution that wanted to shape the political destiny of this country, delink service provision from politics, we are where we are because the individual that we currently have in power does not appreciate the Constitution, does not believe in it. He was not part of the process that brought forth this Constitution. For him, he was still comfortable with the 1963 Constitution other than the progressive one. So for him, for Mr. William Ruto to say that the ministers, the CSAs and the PSAs are to be involved in politics, for him, he never moved. He has never moved from 1963. That is where he is today. And that's why you can see all these political mishaps happening in the country.
Yeah. There's question here.
Yeah.
And I just ask it plainly because
but please do.
You're the lawyer. Let's
interpret
it.
Yeah.
Are ministers state officers? Cabinet secretaries?
If you look at the definition of state officers under the Constitution, that is Article 260 of the Constitution, it has two categories. It defines who is a public officer and who is a state officer. And the test is very simple. If your salary is determined, accrues from the consolidated funds, if your salary is linked to the consolidated funds, you are a state officer or a public officer. Number two, if your money is allocated by Parliament for purposes of your use, you are either a state officer or a public officer. That is a test under Article 260 of the Constitution. Therefore, to answer the fact that the money that is allocated to the cabinet secretaries is allocated by Parliament and that it accrues from the consolidated funds, they are state officers.
And by virtue by them being state officers, the Constitution as well addresses itself on state officers when it comes to election laws under the Election Act and their participation on the same.
Yes.
And what does that say?
It says that as soon as you are a state officer, you must delink yourself from active politics of the day. And the whole idea was to enhance service delivery and delink service delivery from politics. That is the whole architectural theory behind the legislation of that particular provision. Because we realized that service delivery is always lost in the politics of the day. So we wanted to professionalize our public service vehicle by delinking it from the politics of the day and concentrate on delivering of
that
services.
means the Constitution at that point, as it looked at that point, it's the reason why any member of Parliament who was to be appointed to be a cabinet secretary had to resign to delink themselves from the politics of the day. That means today, as we look at an immediate member of Parliament who resigned from that seat, going back to the campaign trail, it means that is abrogation of the law and playing politics.
There cannot be.
Yet they understand the reason why they had to resign to be cabinet
There
secretaries.
cannot be a good interpretation like the one that you have given today. Number two, don't you forget that our constitutional architecture again resembles the model where we have the presidential system of governance. As opposed to the previous one, the Westminster concept, where we had the parliamentary system. So in a presidential system, we always aspire to have a complete separation of powers between the legislature and the executive, the executive and the judiciary and the legislature. So to the extent that you are a cabinet secretary, in view of the doctrine of separation of powers, you are supposed to completely delink yourself from the politics of the day, because you cannot serve two masters. You cannot be in the executive and you're equally in the legislature. Number two, it was to enhance accountability and transparency in the manner in which we run government. One of it being the fact that you are no longer a member of parliament. It therefore means that parliament will have, in its effort to enhance accountability and transparency, and number two, in its efforts to enhance checks and balances over the executive will be highly checked by the legislature, that is parliament. That is why we said you cannot be a member of parliament and equally be a cabinet secretary, as opposed to contrary to what was happening before. So to enhance accountability and oversight over the excesses of the executive, we are all agreed, kama wewe ni waziri, kaa kama waziri. Kama wewe ni mbunge, kaa kama mbunge. So to the extent that William Ruto has decided that the executive will participate in the politics of the day, he is already in abrogation of the constitution. He has violated the constitution. He has disregarded the constitution. If we had a parliament that we contemplated and aspired to have, Dennis, in the 2010 document, today William Ruto would be standing to urge to answer to the impeachment queries if we had the parliament that we contemplated. And that is why we said that we do not want to constitute parliament and constitute executive. We also gave the quality of the executive member that we wish to have and the legislatures. And that is why we said the minimum qualification that you must have for you to be a cabinet secretary is a degree. The assumption was that a person with a degree is rational, is reasonable, is responsive to the circumstances surrounding the appointment procedures and all that. We equally said that we do not want to take idiots to parliament and mediocres. That's why we also gave some standard for them to acquire and to achieve before you become a member of parliament. We were looking at having quality legislatures in parliament. We were looking at having quality legislation in parliament. But unfortunately, that has been watered down to the extent that today you can have a member of parliament who can hardly either express himself in Kiswahili or English or even his mother tongue. He cannot express himself. And of course, noting that mother tongue is not one of the languages that we can execute business with in parliament, then we are disadvantaged. That is why you can see William Ruto can sit pretty, abrogate the constitution, violate it, because he knows he is no member of parliament who is credible enough to pinpoint fingers on them. And those that are aggressive, they are muted by the parliamentary systems. You remember the other day when Honorable Mbowe, of a member of Kadhiani, rose up to raise an issue against these issues of privatization of our parastatos. He was muted, deliberately muted by the deputy speaker. And so what we are saying is that the parliament has been so captured by the executive to the extent that even reasonable members of parliament, like those of Mbowe and the member of parliament, I think where we are now currently seated in Bakassi, Honorable Mawathe, they are muted. They are humiliated. They are not given an opportunity to express themselves. So checks and balances, oversight is done. That is why people can sell companies like Safaricom without anyone raising fingers. When Mbowe attempted to raise a finger that would have attempted to save the situation, Parliament is emasculated. Yeah.
Now, if we're looking at a situation whereby it appears, according to what you're saying,
yes,
there's such a clear abrogation of the law.
Yes, and William should be impeached on that basis.
Well, if that's the case, why does it seem as though it's so accepted? Nobody seems to have an issue with it. It happens, and then we look at it and we say, okay, well, that has happened and how terrible it is.
Yes.
But that's just about the farthest that we go. We use these phrases all the time.
Yes.
Until now, members of parliament are talking about the fact that they themselves have been captured.
Yes.
We've been captured, we know we've been captured, but we're still kind of here.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem as though anybody has a real issue with it.
They have real issues with it. But remember, it's not just parliament that has been emasculated. He has equally emasculated the voice of the people. How? Remember, the 2010 Constitution has created various levels of enhancing accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. First level is where the people elect their representatives with an idea or with an aspiration that these individuals at a particular point X will be able to execute the functions of holding government to account. But when you go there, William Ruto emasculates them the way he has emasculated them.
How does this happen?
William Ruto, in the 2022 elections, he made sure that we have, he has completely mutilated the whole idea of quality members of parliament and decided to concentrate on quantity. Do you understand what I mean?
But these people...
For him, he was looking at the number of the members of parliament who are going to support his programs of selling Kenya and collapsing the systems, as opposed to the legislators who were qualitative enough to challenge his processes.
But they were in parliament. He found these members of parliament. They all ran at the same time. Or are you saying that he...
How would you justify...
process of nomination is how
would
he
you
got them
justify that a constituency where I come from, we have elected a member of parliament who is a lawyer. Gishigo constituency, Gishimo. But even when bad legislation is taking place, he never speaks. He has no voice. And we thought that electing this individual as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, at least he would ensure that we stick to the path of the rule of law.
So according to you, there's a certain kind of indoctrination that happens.
It's not indoctrination. These guys have been bought.
When does it happen?
Wamenunuliwa wote. William Ruto amewakash. They are commodities in parliament, other than a few of them. Yes. Those are William Ruto looks at them vile unaendanga kwa duka unaona sukari. Hii ni sukari inaweza nunua. Hii ni unga ya mahindi inaweza nunua. Hii ni maziwa inaweza nunua. That's how William Ruto views parliament.
Wakili.
Okay.
Yes.
Wakili, you painted a picture of the elections and the participation of public service officials in it, and what the law says in that. But when you talk about the election laws, that squarely lies under the purview of IEBC. Right? And IEBC, as the referee of elections, should be able to stand and say, Agai, the law says you should not be part and parcel of these elections.
Absolutely.
Based off what the Constitution says. We therefore demand that you desist.
Yes.
And we are equally sending warnings. I'm assuming that's how it would have happened. We're sending warning to the candidate you're supporting. That there will be repercussions of that. But that is not what we see from the electoral body, IEBC. They gave out a statement on the same and called out individuals who are participating in that. But it remained being that. It is just calling them out. If the law was broken, someone ought to be in court right now to answer as to why that law was broken. Maybe I'm the one who's overdoing things.
We in 2022 presidential election between Raila Odinga and William Ruto, we attempted to bring that argument before the Supreme Court. And of course the Supreme Court said that the cabinet secretaries and the PSs serves at the pleasure of the president. So at that particular time, instead of the Supreme Court coming up to strengthen the desire that Kenyans wanted or aspired to achieve by creating bars and restraining measures for cabinet secretary to be involved in politics, the Supreme Court opened the floodgates. So today, even if you are to go to court and say, oh, the cabinet secretary, Ruko, was involved in campaigning for Wamudende, it will still end up with a zero result because the Supreme Court has made a decision that they serve the pleasure of the president. So this, what we're saying is that it's not everything that the court can pronounce on. But again, I would wish to say that really the Supreme Court there failed us. They failed us by not sticking to the stricter provisions of the Constitution. But then we need to ask ourselves, where do we need to be as a nation? You see, IEBC must act as a first point of call in making sure they have a resemblance, even if they're not able to give us, they give a resemblance of a free, fair, equitable, secure, verifiable, transparent, and accountable elections. At least that is the bare minimum that is required of them. That is to say, going by the Supreme Court's decision, or what the IEBC ought to do is to ensure that these tenets of fairness are applicable. For example, by making sure that if a candidate indicates that if the IEBC gives the limits upon which you can spend in your campaigns, that is adhered to. Number two, IEBC must know that it's not working for government. It's working for the people of Kenya. And in this country, we have two groups or three groups. Those who support government, those who don't support government, and those who are completely apolitical. So it must be able to deliver for those two, for the first two groups. Because if you are apolitical, IEBC has no business with you. You can remain apolitical. It's your freedom. It's your right. But if you are actively participating in politics, IEBC must not be seen to be holding brief for the government of the day. And that is what is worrying us. Because it's not just the question of the involvement of the executive in campaigns. There was violence that was witnessed across the board. And most importantly, the violence that was meted to the people of Malava constituency. One of the principles that Article 89 speaks about the Constitution is free from intimidation. Because an election cannot be fair, it cannot be free, it cannot be accountable, it cannot be transparent, it cannot be verifiable, it cannot be secure if it is meted with violence or intimidation of voters. And intimidation comes in various ways and forms. For example, during the by-election in Mbeere North, there were over 40,000 or 50,000 police officers, all of them with batons, others with guns, others with full police gears, others with canisters and launch guns that launch canisters, tankers and tankers of police officers in a small election. In a single polling center. A polling center could perhaps be hosting about 20 police officers.
Right.
An issue that is so alien to the people of Mbeere. It was meant to intimidate. It was meant to suppress. So IEBC, if they want to win people's confidence, they must make sure that the principles for which they were established are achieved. They must oversee the implementation and the process of achieving those principles. Otherwise, they must understand that they go to office on a very low public confidence and public trust. It is now their work to earn back this trust. But unfortunately, they are failing. The chairperson of the commission has not spoken about the violence.
And would it have been required that such a thing happened, that when there was, because look, even if you would hear it, but even if you didn't see it, you've seen that these are the things that happened, that there was violence.
Yes.
That there were according to the Elections Act, there are certain people who cannot be around a polling station.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially during a by-election, because there are still sitting members in positions at that time, not like a general election whereby we're on ground zero for everybody.
Yeah.
But that a sitting member of parliament has no business being around an election, a polling station. That we shouldn't have the kind of things that we're seeing happen.
We should not
that
have.
When we have heard things like voter bribery, there should have been investigation on the spot about things like this.
Yes.
When there has been violence,
that is right.
That we should have been seen action taken. Regardless of whatever side of the political divide you are on, these things by an electoral body should not have happened.
Yes.
Now, in the event that they did happen and we see no action being taken beyond condemning them and then reporting them to police, what then would you imagine should be the next action point, either for the IEBC or for the people for which this process is being
what happens, and you remember I indicated that the Constitution has created various levels and realms of accountability, is where the system fails us. Be it the state organs, the office of the ODPP, the office of the IG, the office of the commissioners, where the office fails us, where Parliament fails us, where IBC fails us, we have the recourse of Article 37 of the Constitution. The streets are the only alternative voice of holding government to account. And I keep on saying that Article 37 that took us to the streets last year and this year is an alternative mechanism of checking on the excesses of government. Because it is the people themselves who are the owners of the Constitution, who are the sovereign, speaking through the street. So when the institution fails, the people have a right and the freedom to bypass those institutions.
The institutions will kill
and
you,
get to the streets. But unfortunately, we are dealing with the rogue system. The rogue system fights the streets as a threat to their existence, as opposed to fighting the streets as an alternative means of holding the government to account. In developed democracies, the streets is an institutionalized alternative means of holding government to account. That is why people like Rosa Parks in 1957 was able to stand up against the discrimination of the municipal buses in Alabama. It is as a result of that protest that people boycotted the municipal bus for 1 year, that people like Akina Martin Luther King came their name later. People like Akina Muhammad Ali speaking about the discrimination. People like Malcolm X coming out and speaking against it. You know, the streets must be understood as an alternative means legitimately enacted in our Constitution to hold government to account. So anybody who is going to the street is equal to the member of Parliament who is legislating in Bunge.
Right.
And the reason why he's doing that is because the member of Parliament has failed. So where the member of Parliament fails to hold government to account, the street becomes an alternative voice. And when you are in the streets, you are legislating.
When you hear the words come out into the streets, many would say, Wakili, that what you're asking for is a situation of violence through protest.
No, it's not violence. It's not violence. It is the people who do not understand the doctrine of the sovereign of the people who thinks that you need to respond to the people on the streets with fire. That is because in the first instance, that person firing ought to be held to account. But the system has failed. Like, for example, let me tell you, already we should be having the office of the ODPP authorizing the office of the IG to investigate on the violence that was met at the people of Malava and the people of Mbeere North. But you can see they have become complacent because the office of the ODPP thinks that's part and parcel of the executive. They fail to understand that Article 157 has created a very serious autonomous office of the ODPP. But they feel intimidated because they know Kasongo will not leave you. If you attempt to say that there ought to be investigations, they are afraid that their jobs will be at risk. So then what are we helpless? No, we're not helpless. In the event the office of the ODPP fails to initiate these investigations and to direct the IG to initiate these investigations, Kenyans have a risk of initiating private prosecution. So those are the options we are exploring. And systems are rolling to ensure that this thing is done.
Wakili, you've just mentioned in terms of the decision that was made by the Supreme Court and what that then means moving forward on public servants being in this campaign trail. Because remember, the highest court in land has given a determination and a guideline and has pronounced itself on the same. So we expect to see more cabinet secretaries on these on these campaigns.
We shall.
But then the question would be, where does IEBC stand when it is giving its regulation? Because remember, at the time during elections, IEBC will give regulation which then becomes law and which will guide the election at that time. And as well as you talk of going to the streets, it is a right in the constitution, right? But Kenyans today, no one wants to go to the street because, again, the police that we're talking about, that is supposed to protect the very right, that is supposed to even guide them during this protest. Kenyans are afraid these people will kill us. How do Kenyans fight for that, not surrender, and appear on the street as an alternative voice, but at the back of their mind, cops will show up and they will deal with us?
We have a situation that is coming up in 2027. There's a situation that will emerge where where neither the bullets, no water cannons, no police brutality, no tear gas will stop that process from taking place. The place of the people to determine the manner in which they want to be governed and who ought to govern them. They have that rare opportunity of redeeming themselves in 2027. But the unfortunate thing is that this process will not begin in 2027. It begins now. With the IBC laying down, first of all, the ability to win the people's confidence that they can be able to oversee an election that is credible, an election that will result in speaking the will of the people. That is one thing the IBC must do. And if the chairman of the IBC does not understand that he's suffering from trust deficit from Kenyans, then we are at a loss. Number two, we are calling upon our other partners, the international partners. They must stand put and make sure that this country is delivered. The country is from bad governance.
Wakili, do you really believe that the international community is interested in seeing Kenya in a stable political environment that doesn't benefit them in any way?
Of course, that field again is divided because of the question of the geopolitics and the geoeconomics taking place. It's divided. But there are some of them who really believe that democracies ought to be allowed to thrive and to grow, because the growth of the democracy will culminate or trigger the economic growth and the social growth and the social stability of a country. Number two, why I'm saying that they must watch is because we live in a community of nations. We don't live in isolation. What happens in Kenya affects what happens in Uganda, Tanzania, and again our neighbors and the global, the entire global nation. Like you can see what is happening in Tanzania. If the international community will be able to push the Tanzania issue to its logical conclusion, it will act as a deterrent for William Ruto. Do you understand what I mean? If ICC investigates the atrocities that were committed and caused by Suluhu Hassan in Tanzania, and if she ends up in The Hague, it will act as a deterrence for her neighbors.
He's been to The Hague.
Yeah.
He's been to the ICC.
Well, I know. We do not understand that he could be hardened.
And I think he's actually made reference to this before.
Yes.
That, look, we've been to the ICC at our ameona mi sina makosa, and I came back and I am president.
Si ati hakuwa na makosa.
So,
mpaka saizi file ya William Ruto ya ICC bado iko. Haijaifungwa. Remember, witnesses disappeared. Don't forget that Yebei was found somewhere in the Savo and others. Don't forget about that fact. The fact is that William Ruto's case is still pending at the ICC. But we are saying the international community should make sure that actions are taken in Tanzania so as to act as a deterrence measure in Kenya. Otherwise, if we allow the situation to exist as it is, and if IBC continue to exhibit a conduct that they're in bed with the government, they are quoting a situation that may arise and may go out of control. Because I do not see Kenyans agreeing to the swearing in of a president who has rigged an election. It is their constitutional right to resist the swearing in of a president whose election is questionable and whose election does not square out in accordance with the Constitution. For one reason, Dennis, Article 3 of the Constitution provides that every Kenyan has the obligation and the responsibility to respect, uphold, and protect the constitution from being abrogated. A president who has come in through dubious means of rigging an election is not a president who is protected by the constitution, because his election does not square out with the principles contemplated by the constitution. And therefore the people of Kenya, they have the power to resist the swearing in of such a president under Article 3 and Article 1 of the Constitution when they exercise their power in protection of the Constitution.
Okay, I asked you the question about the Supreme Court ruling,
yes.
right? And what that means going 2027. We're likely to see more
replica
civil servants appearing on campaign trails. And how does that dent IEBC's position and its tough work in winning Kenyan souls and believe and trust that they can deliver? So look at the Supreme Court decision.
Yes.
Look at how much work IEBC has to work already in terms of winning Kenyans, for Kenyans to trust that they can deliver.
Yes. My view on that is that is a situation where IEBC must invite itself into a self-introspection process, where they must come up with rules that guarantees the process of a free and fair elections. IEBC is mandated to issue regulations on how elections should be conducted. The reason why the Supreme Court indicated as it did is because IEBC has negated on its responsibility of regulating who should participate in an election and who should not participate in an election. So if regulations today, and even Parliament itself, Parliament should legislate clearly and say that if you're a member of Parliament, or if you are, a cabinet secretary, or affiliate, or a member of the executive, you cannot actively participate in the elections. And if you do, these are the consequences. So part of these things that we are experiencing is because of the inability to, the lacuna in law. If we had a clear provisions and express provisions of the law, those things would not be taking place. They would be clear. Yeah,
I see. We can see all of this from what the law provides, right? Very, very clear. Because we talk about the language used by the Constitution and all of that.
Yes.
But if you actually read it, right, and read it for yourself, and actually take a little bit of time to study it, then you will find that actually some of the things that it says then become very clear to you as an individual in terms of what you can do as a Kenyan operating within this Kenyan space.
Yes.
So, I guess this is a call for people to actually read it and see what it says.
Yes.
Because could that actually then fuel your action in the future? Because with reading then comes comprehension.
Yes.
And if you then comprehend what this thing says, it also then gives you insight into further or future action.
Absolutely.
So, I guess that would, I'm already answering the question, is that one of the reasons why we don't see action in a particular direction is because there is not an understanding. And this is not a disrespect of the Kenyan people in the majority. It is not disrespect. It is to say that we don't act because we do not know what you can actually do.
Absolutely.
Many people are not concerned with whether a cabinet secretary is standing atop of a vehicle.
Yes.
Whether that was breaking the law or not.
And by the way,
nobody knows this. So nobody bothers.
We must keep on preaching against the evils and the vices in our governance system. Whether William Ruto is there or William Ruto is not there, it must be a consistent reminder to the people of Kenya that a country, an individual will come and an individual will go. But the rule of law and constitutionalism will survive individuals. So we must press on making sure that the rule of law and the constitutionalism guides this country much more than the benevolence of an individual. Because individuals keep on changing, regimes keeps on changing. Today we have a benevolent person, tomorrow we have a hooligan in power. So we must anchor our future and our faith in law as opposed to individuals. Number two, we must keep on reminding Kenyans what is good for them and what is bad for them. What is good for them is a president who is a stickler to the law. A president who says that the Constitution is my first manifesto. The rule of law is my second manifesto. All other things will accrue from the Constitution and the rule of law. Because even when you want to say that you want to build roads or you want to make Kenya a Singapore, the imagination of Kenya as being a Singapore, it must be premised on the law. Because that process will involve about issues of procurement, employment. All these are regulated by the law. So the first point of call for any person who wants to change this country, it must be the Constitution and the rule of law. And that's what I've said. Any person who aspires to be a president and tells me that the constitution will be my first manifesto, I will support that person. And Kenyans must understand that their problems will be solved not by the benevolence of an individual, but by the strict adherence to the rule of law. That's how nations have been able to rise up. That's how Singapore was able to rise up. Singapore did not rise up because of the benevolence, the stories, nyingi za jaba za mtu. It's not that what made Singapore rise up. Singapore has not risen by faith. It has risen by actions. So deliberate actions must be taken towards taking that particular path. Yes, the other day I was in Mombasa. And I used the SGR. And of course deliberately. And we got to which station is it? The last station is called
Mariakani.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we were in transit, the hostess, the train attendants would keep on reminding us, na mukumbuke tukifika Mombasa kuna commuter train inatoa watu kutoka kwa terminus to Mombasa town.
Yes.
About a kilometer again, na mukumbuke hiyo train itawalipisha 50 shillings. So by the time you are getting to Mombasa, you already know that you have an alternative means of the commuter train to get you to the city.
How much it costs.
And you already know how much it cost. And granted the circumstances of the economy, we were all very enthusiastic to hike that train. But let me tell you, that commuter train cost Kenyan 6 billion to repair it. It is the old lunatic train that was retired, that was refurbished, painted, and put back on rail. It is a death trap. And I was like, how the hell do you tell me that this is a commuter train that's supposed to change to be part and parcel of changing this country to a Singapore?
And you got on the train. You did.
I did. I was on that train. It's a very unsafe thing to use. It's a death trap. But look at the amount of the money it has cost. 6 billion to refurbish a lunatic train. And then you tell me that you have the desire, the will, and the wherewithals to get this country to the Singapore? It is a pipe dream. We cannot get to Singapore if we're not controlling corruption. We cannot get to Singapore if we're not controlling wastages. We cannot get to Singapore if we do not have discipline in government. We cannot get to Singapore if the civil society, if the public service is not a motivated public service. Because public service is a vehicle that delivers the government's agenda. Look at how demotivated they are today. And that is why Kasong will have a problem in 2027. He will not apply them in the campaigns because they themselves are also fighting to liberate themselves from taxation and bad governance. Remember, they also live in this country. So he will not have the advantage of that system, the civil service system, to think that he's going to utilize them for his own benefit, because they are also people who are fighting to liberate themselves.
Wakili, we talk about a constitution that is the blueprint of this country, right? That if everyone living in this country decided to read, understand, uphold, and implement that constitution, we do not need any other assistance, because where we're headed is properly guided by the law.
Absolutely.
That all that is needed, correct me if I'm wrong, is political goodwill that will then give credence to those who are in National Assembly in terms of putting in place policies or giving powers that would help implement this constitution. Because you've clearly said that even when it comes to electoral laws, it's because there is a lacuna that needs the power of Parliament to pass these policies that will then guide how the implementation of the same is. That means if we have a proper political goodwill, this constitution that we have is the proper blueprint that will guide us towards Singapore.
I would tell Kenyans, let us not lose faith in our constitution. All what we do not have is a good person to implement it. William Ruto cannot be a solution to implement this constitution because he does not believe in it. He swore to uphold and defend a document that he himself has never read. If he had ever read the constitution, he would know that it is not proper for a president to order people to be shot in their legs. If he had ever read the Constitution, he would understand that one of the principles of governance and one of the expectations of a president under Article 131 of the Constitution is public trust. To the extent that he has become a perpetual pathological liar, then it does not conform to the dictates of the Constitution and Chapter 6 of the Constitution vis-a-vis Article 75 that says you must initiate and enhance public confidence in your office.
And for the purposes of this conversation, we are describing or defining a lie as what?
We are describing a lie, yani uongo. Kwa njia ya Kiswahili na Kiswahili sanifu. Yani yule mtu ambaye haezi kusema maneno ambayo yanaweza kuaminika, huo ni muongo. Kwa mfano, unapokuja kusema kwamba mtungi ya gesi itakuwa inatoka shilingi 500. Alafu hiyo sasa inatoka shilingi 1000. Wewe ni muongo.
Okay.
Kwa mfano, unaposema ya kwamba umeajiri watoto wengi sana kupitia affordable housing na affordable housing imebadilisha uchumi wetu wa Kenya na watu bado wanalia, huo ni muongo. Unaposema kwamba umeweka maneno kama ya inaitwa nini? Hustlers funds. Na hiyo ile Hustlers fund ni njia yako moja ya kuiba na kuangamiza uchumi wetu wa nchi ya Kenya. Wewe ni muongo na wewe ni mwizi. Wewe ni muongo na ni mwizi. Endapo unakuwa unahudhuria ama unashuhudia wizi katika nchi ya Kenya na unahusika katika huo wizi, wewe ni muongo. Nimeona leo katika taarifa ikisemekana kwamba William Ruto amesema ya kwamba yeye kazi yake anataka kujenga uchumi, kujenga nchi, hajishughulishi na maneno ya utajiri, ako na utajiri mwingi wa kutosha. Umeona hiyo kwa leo? Angesema nimeiba ya kutosha, nimetosheka. Nimeiba ya kutosha, sasa hakuna kitu kingine ya kuiba. It is not that William Ruto has enough wealth that he no longer needs it. It's because the country has been milked dry. The country is bankrupt. Have I defined a lawyer and a thief?
I got it.
Yes.
So with all of these things taken into consideration and the position in which Kenyans find themselves today, I'm just coming back to that point where you said, it seems as though you've tried, you've not budged here.
Yes.
People have had conversations, and though we keep having the conversations, what you're saying is that when we look at revolutions that happened in the past, there had to be a shifting of the status quo, not even a shifting, a complete overturning of the status quo for a new order to come in place.
Yes.
I hear you advocating for that.
Yes, I am advocating for a new order that is constitutional and not extra constitutional. And a new order is realizable by the persons that you put into power. That's what we are saying. We must remove this regime and put a regime that will be premised on the rule of law and constitutionalism. And that is what we in the United Opposition, we are promising Kenyans. That our first point of call, our first manifesto will be the Constitution. Our second manifesto will be the rule of law. Our third manifesto then is what we are now going to say, what the law is going to help us do, what the Constitution is going to help us do. I just saw today in the morning, and I received 411, that CBK data shows 6.3% growth in 9 months of our public debt. That is to say, our public debt for the last 1 month has grown with 6.3%. 6 months. Kibaki, for 10 years, I think he took a loan of about 1.5 trillion. Uhuru took a loan of about, in 10 years, took a loan of about 6 trillion. William Ruto, in 3 years, has taken a loan of over 6 trillion. And when you try to see the application of this money, it's nowhere.
It's difficult.
The other day he went and launched the road to Riloni, Mau
Summit, yes.
I had the advantage of using that road on Friday on my way to Kitale. I did not see a single excavator. I only saw 4 of them hapa Kikuyu zikicheza na mchanga hapo tu. Today, there's basically no execution. So this person is taking us for granted, Dennis, and thinking that we are so daft, we are not able to see. So William Ruto, Kenyans must gather themselves to get rid of William Ruto, because William Ruto is a disaster for this country, is a curse to the nation, is a tragedy to our generation.
Those are heavy things you're saying.
Is a tragedy to ourselves, and we must liberate ourselves from Mr. William Ruto.
Even as we wrap up, those are heavy things that you're saying.
Yes, and I am allowed to say them. I am expressing myself. And you know why I'm calling upon Kenyans to rise up to the occasion? Is because we cannot afford to fail ourselves and fail the future generation. At least one of us, Dennis, must succeed. We either succeed our generation, and also help the future generation to succeed by laying down the necessary infrastructures. And Kenyans must overcome their fears. Their fear should be only the fear itself. Let us not cling on fear as a source of our inability to be active in the manner in which we want to be governed.
Indeed.
Let's not allow fear to hold us captive. Let us not allow fear to enslave us. We must overcome fear if you want to have a government that is responsive. Good government, a good governance system, an accountable system, a transparent system, a system that is premised on the rule of law, a system that is responsive to the plight of the people, the Bill of Rights that must be respected, not a system that when you go to the streets, you are abducted. When you go to the streets, you are extrajudicially killed. You are locked. In Communicado, we must act towards making sure that the provisions of Article 10 are met. Transparency, accountability, the people's participation, the democracy of the people, the human right, the Bill of Rights, the rule of law. Inclusivity of the people, the distribution of resources in an equitable and equal manner. We must liberate ourselves. Fear must not be our destiny.
And on those words, we end this conversation this morning.
Imeisha sasa sangapi? We have not even touched what the paper says, like Safaricom. You see, how would Kenyans allow Safaricom to be sold? How?
I hear what
and you know, by the way, as I sum up, the people who went to negotiate on behalf of government are not even government employees in the sale of Safaricom. They are not government employees. They are not known in our laws. Because our laws prescribes the persons who should engage directly with the government. The office of the Attorney General should be the person to lead in such kind of negotiations. And the people must be told. So we are asking the office of the Attorney General and the office of the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, let them lay bare the persons who went to negotiate on behalf of government for the sale of 15% stake in Safaricom.
And then there will be an understanding.
And then Kenyans must understand that the only cow that is producing and yielding milk, that is Safaricom and Kenya Pipeline Corporation, they have been sold. Which farmer sells his best yielding cow? Ni mkulima mgani anauza yule ng'ombe wake mzuri anatoa maziwa? Huwa lazima ni mkulima mjinga na mkulima mshenzi.
Conversation for another day.
For sure. Wakili Ndegwa Njiru, thank you for being here with us this morning. Lay bare some insights on some of these things. Way past the hour, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Of course, for us to continue having this conversation.
By the way, we can't end without me saying Merry Christmas.
Oh, indeed.
And Happy New Year to our listeners.
Yeah.
It has been a good and engaging year. We cannot be grateful enough to this station for the works that you are doing.
Asante sana.
You are part and part of the voice of change. You are doing what you can in your space. Continue doing the good job. We will meet in 2027 when we shall be celebrating the liberation of the country.
Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.